seems to be the seems Bangladesh seems to be a research laboratory for climate change, at least in South Asia. And they found that there are a number of publications that came out from Bangladesh, and they were relating the mountains to publications. And I think for policy advocates, the data collections and then collecting quality data, I think it's very important to influence policy and then inform people what is happening in the particular region. So today, excuse me, today I would like to take you to this region, but what I did was maybe not talk so much about case studies that we have done in this region, but relatively talk about as a whole in the mountain region. So I have taken quite a lot of materials published by International Center for Mountain Development, ECMODE, and I'll be using those resources in addition to a few of mine to actually inform about the issues, water resources, and then food security. When I talk about water resources, I think we can't really talk about water resources without talking about other resources, other impacts, other drivers such as climate change. So just to start, I'd like to thank all of you for for your interest. And I see Ram Narayan sir, and then who else is there? I can also see Professor Sanjay Swami attending this one. Thank you so much, sir, for your interest, and thank you, all of you. So let me just take you through this, and this would be my content for today's presentation. A little bit about the Himalaya. When you talk about Himalaya, I think we need to also understand the location of Himalayas, different dynamics of the Himalayas, and then relating to that one, socio-ecological characteristics that is related to population and different hazards. What are the different risks in this Himalayan region? And specifically from ECMODE publications, what are the drivers of change in the mountain system? Relatively, just to show that the different drivers, and then after that, we'll talk about climate change. And when you talk about climate change, then I can relate to the water resources, the importance of water resources, because it is a fundamental resources to us. And how can we manage that? I'll try to a little bit dig deeper into this, and I'll end up with the agriculture scenario in Bhutan, and then as a whole, the little bit touching on the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, concluding with the different policy scenarios, how different countries are faring in this region. So when I talk about this, start presenting, I'll be talking about the different countries in this region. Please. You can see in this the map that the green areas, that is the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, where these blue regions are the basins, river basins. So this side, the Indus River basins, and then Ganges River basin and Brahmaputra river basins. So these basically three big rivers in this region, and then a little bit towards the Myanmar side, there is a river basin called the Irrawaddy river basin. So I'll not be talking so much about Irrawaddy and then the Indus river basins, but more towards the Ganges and then Brahmaputra river basin. So you can see that these rivers, and then the green and then blue, these are river basins, and then Himalayan region. Here, the interesting thing is that this Himalayan region is also considered as the third pole. We have North Pole, we have South Pole, and then another one is the third pole, and this is Himalaya. The reason for that is that there is a significant amount of ice reserves next to the North Pole and South Pole, and I think that's the reason that people define it as a third pole. And when I say there are a lot of the ice reserve in this region, this forms a water tower, which is a source of water for these rivers, and then that's where this civilization, agriculture, development, so and so forth happens in these river basins. So now this one, the Himalayan, the Hindu Kush, it is known as the Hindu Kush Himalaya. This one, it is extending from the western to the eastern, covering all this, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, northern part of India, Nepal, Bhutan, a little bit of Bangladesh. Then towards this side, this is China, and you can see that Bhutan is here, and northern side is China. This side, eastern side is India, western side is India, and bordered by India on the south side also. And further east, these are the Chinese territories, and there is a Myanmar as well. So this Himalayan region, actually, Hindu Kush Himalayan region covers this area, which is gray in color. Now, there are so many things actually in this. We can see different regions, different mountains, so much of resources, so much of the cultural diversity, etc., etc. So when we go from one region to the another region, even in the same country, in India, we can find that the culture is very different. Tradition is different, language is different, the ways of doing things is different. So, but then in this region, we can see that just look at the areas. There is significant areas, and there are different sources. They documented this, and we can see that population in million, especially in this Himalayan region. How much population is there in the Himalaya? Of course, when you talk about the water resources, we can't really only talk about Himalayan region, but these statistics here, you can see that Indus Basin, 312 million, Ganges Basin, 637 million, and then Brahmaputra Basin, it's a little bit less, 71 million population. And that's in the river basin. Now, and that actually connects different areas. Just move this a bit here. So we can see that in this Himalayan region, I am not talking about the southern part of India and in other regions outside of Himalaya. Here in this graph, you can see population living within the Himalayan region of Afghanistan, Bangladesh. That's you can see the country's population, and then people who are living in that region. So Bhutan is within the countries within the Himalaya. So you can see 100% of the population lives in Himalaya. In Afghanistan, 89% of the country's population lives within the Himalayan region. Bangladesh just 1%, and then China 2%, India 6%, and then you can see in case of Nepal also, all area is included within the Himalayan region, so it is 100% population. Now, from this we can see that what is the density of these population living within that one? Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan. We can see that of course in Bhutan it is the country's density is 23. People who are living within the Himalayan region is 23 people per square kilometer. In Afghanistan, it is 49, but within Himalaya, it is 73. Likewise, we can look at India. It is 344 people per square kilometer. But within the Himalayan region, it is 150 people per individuals per square kilometer. So that's the figure of population in this region. Now, okay, let me move this a bit here. Okay. Now, when you look at poverty, because when you talk about resources, be it land, water, forests, we also need to think about the economic status of people. And when you look at these are years, the data was collected 2011, 2016, 2017, 2011, And these are the poverty rate. Here for Afghanistan, it is 35.8%. That is the poverty rate. Similarly, Bhutan, it is 8.2%. And these are different statistics for different regions. Now, the employment, if you just look at, in Bhutan, it is the 15%, that is the 15% of the country's revenue is coming from the agriculture, and 39% coming from the other areas, and then service sector. And then industry, Bhutan actually, I think in case of Bhutan, about 38% is the hydropower, and about 2% is the other sector. So there is very limited revenue that is contributed from the other sectors, but most of this is coming from the hydropower. So similarly, these are other sectors. Similarly, China, we can see agriculture, forestry, and fishing contributes only 8%, and 41% from the industry, and other services sector, it is 52. So similarly, these are the different statistics we can look at this. And from this also, we can figure out that dependence of the countries on the natural resources like the agriculture and the industry sector. Now, in terms of population, when you look at employment in terms of the total population, Bhutan, you can see that 57%, but this was 2017 data, and just last month we are looking at it, and then now it has reduced to 49%, which means more and more people are leaving the rural areas, moving to urban areas for better jobs, better salaries, etc. One of the reasons, at least in Bhutan, is that agriculture is not really doing well due to the impact of climate change. So the input is always higher than the output. That's why people are not really happy with the farming in the rural areas. And it is also very much mountainous in Bhutan. That's why it is really difficult to make a business and be prosperous doing agriculture in the mountainous region. And in the context of climate change, this is very important. And similarly, you can see that in Nepal, this is, I think, 2017 data also, 72% total population engaged in farming in Nepal is much more. Of course, in terms of land area, Bhutan has less than 3%. And Nepal has relatively more land areas for agriculture. But still, we can see that relatively more population in Nepal is engaged in agriculture. It has longer Himalayan range, mountainous areas, and we can look at that from the climate change perspective, what would happen in the future. If we just look at the temperature in the last 100 years, the average increase in temperature is 0.8 degrees Celsius. And until now, there are so many issues of pests and diseases to the crop failure, extreme events like storms damaging crops. And if the average temperature increases to 1 degree Celsius, and then increases further to 1.5 degrees Celsius, I would not know what would happen in the future. So, but in terms of food and nutrition security, just look at these statistics. Of course, there is no data available in 2017, so they did not put it here. But at least in Afghanistan, from 33 to 30, they reduced to 30% from 2006 to 2017. So within that year range, 3% decrease. Bangladesh about 2% decrease, and in India it is 21% to 15%. That's a huge jump. And Myanmar, we can see that 32% to 11%. It is quite big jump actually. Similarly, in case of Nepal, we can see that 16% to 10%. That's a interesting and then big jump. Now, what ICIMOD has documented is that what are the different environmental drivers in this drivers of mountain change. we can see that in the mountain system, there are different things. One is the programs, projects, the financial investments, the urbanization, development of the infrastructure. These are some of the, from the economic contexts, from the developmental philosophies, they have mentioned this, at least government policies are changing. Sometimes they are not functional. That's why these policies are a little bit, not effective in conserving the fragile ecosystem in the mountains. And projects, sometimes the projects comes and then the activities are only up to the project period. When project leaves, then there is nothing, no continuity of the projects. Financial investment to regions, because mountainous area means traveling to different areas is a very difficult journey because of the terrain, and doing business again is in the mountain is very difficult. That's why financial investment is also a little bit risky. And while doing, developing the infrastructure, urbanization is relatively costly because it needs a lot of infrastructure to develop. And another thing is the population in terms of the rural-urban migration. I think Bhutan, Nepal, in this Himalayan region, even in the northern India, western, central, and western India, the mountain to plain areas, migration is significant in this region. The statistics is quite interesting. And then that is why, if you just look at from the environmental perspective, what they have mentioned is land use choices. What is practiced and what is mentioned at the policy level is sometimes a little bit conflicting. Of course, it is relative from one country to the other. Bhutan has been a little bit successful in terms of implementing policies strictly. We do not know what would happen in the future, but so far it is relatively is effective. But that is also it is relative because Bhutan's population is relatively small, less than 1 million population. So in other regions, the population is relatively higher. And in terms of exploitation of the resources, the pollution is the main driving factor in this region. Soil, land pollution, soil pollution, water pollution, air pollution. So these are the interesting issues in this region. So in terms of the if we need to make this mountain sustainable, what they have argued is that we need to look at from the economic viability, we need to look at from the social well-being, and we need to look at from the environmental sustainability. Of course, this framework is a very broad. It may be applicable to other regions as well, but for the mountains, what they have mentioned is these three things we can't escape. We need to actually mention these three things specifically. So, but then these policies are there, programs are there. We can talk about programs. We can talk about culture, tradition, resources use, etc. But then this the issue of the global issue of climate change. This is again a stumbling block for development in this region. Now, if you just look at it, this 1951 to 2014, this total precipitation. There is a lot of precipitation coming, a lot of rainfall is coming, a lot of snow is coming, but then it is coming in a short period of time. The intensity and then the frequency is very different from the past. In the past, there used to be rainfall for a long period of time, a couple of weeks, and then the intensity of the rainfall used to be relatively, just look at data, it is relatively less intense than what is now. And what that will do to the soil is that when there is less intense rain, the water will actually get time to percolate into the soil, and then it will recharge the aquifer, and then the spring water would recharge. And one of the impacts of this one in the Himalayan region is drying up of the spring water. And there are a significant number of springs in Bhutan. I think more than 3,000 spring water has been already dried up in this last decade. And if you just look at statistics in the Nepal region, Nepal, and in other areas, Arunachal Pradesh, and then the central India in Uttarakhand, I think the data is interesting. Now, if you just look at the description of this, there is always a decreasing monsoon, the shortening of the period of rainfall, and increase in intensity of the rainfall. That's why there is a lot of flooding, a lot of landslides, the soil erosion in this region. So, and this description tells about the precipitation trend in this region, and it is very significant change in the last at least 2-3 decades. Now, why precipitation is important? Because, as I said, one is recharging of the aquifer, spring water. Another one is when there's precipitation, also means getting snow. When you get snow for a long period of time, that will have implications to regional temperature change. So changing ecosystem, etc., etc. That is a significant impact from the precipitation. Now, there are other things, the extreme events in this region. If you just look at it, the frost days, for example, is shortened significantly. Cold days, number of cold days is shortened, and then the cold nights has shortened. But other things, for example, maximum precipitation, 3-day maximum precipitation, these things are actually quite high. The frequency is quite high. And then another significant source of water in this region is that glacier cumulative mass balance. You can see that Asia high mountains, the dark line. This is from 1960s up to 1970s. Little decrease, not so much, but then after that 1980 decreased significantly, 1990, and then up to 2003 it has significantly decreased. And if you just look at up to 2020, it is quite interesting actually to look at the trend. Now, why should we talk about precipitation? In the right-hand side, you can see that the mean temperature, maximum temperature, these are the trend. We can just look at this and assume what's happening from 1900 to 2000. That's the trend. And with that slow onset, climate scientists, they would like to say that slow onset with this rising temperature. And with that, what happens is the rising temperature, snow melts, and when snow melts, goes down, creates a lake, and then when that lakes become big, it will burst, and that lake burst, and it is called the glacial lake outburst floods, which is in short called as GLOF, G-L-O-F. And this GLOF, what happens is it just flows down, and then it just floods the river basins, and then in at least in Bhutan, most of the communities are living around that river basins, banks of the river, infrastructure, for example, hydropower. At least in Bhutan, around 40% of the, as you have seen that, at least 40% of the revenue comes from the hydropower. And with that glacial lake outburst floods, all of these hydropower dams are in risks. And that is in Bhutan only. Now, from Bhutan, these rivers actually flows down to the India and to the Bangladesh. And there are more than 40 million people living in Bangladesh, in India, in Assam, along that Brahmaputra river. And we can assume what would happen to these people who are living in that region. Now, another thing is these floods, you can see that here, down here, you can see what would happen in the downstream areas. And these things are actually, we are seeing, experiencing in this region, Bhutan, Nepal. If you just Google it, you can get a lot of pictures from this region. Yeah, and then these the blue color here. These are blue dots are the glaciers in this region, Himalayan region. Western Himalaya, Central Himalaya here. This is Nepal, and Bhutan is here. You can see that significant number of glaciers in the east of Bhutan also. And when all of this river actually melts, what will happen is there are rivers, and it will go to this Brahmaputra, and then these basins, if flooded, as I said, more than 40 million people in this region would be affected. And by the way, this region has the highest density of population in the world. Yeah, and you can see that here in the right-hand side corner, this is a map of Bhutan, and one research shows that another impact of climate change is that these red dots mean a negative water balance, which means land is very dry. And in the bottom one, you can see these red dots are the agricultural fields in Bhutan. And number one, if glaciers melt up here, and if these rivers are flooded, most of this actually agricultural lands would be washed away, flooded, it will be destroyed. Number one, that is glacier to river, and then the agricultural land, that is the relationship. Another one, of course, there is this region also receives a lot of precipitation, but then this soil has already become dry, and most of the actually these agricultural fields are located in these areas. And then if these areas have a negative water balance, then we can think about what would happen to the rice cultivation in the future. Now it is only average of 0.8 degrees Celsius increase in temperature in the last 100 years. And people are talking about increase in temperature to 1 degree Celsius, 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius. And I don't know what would happen in this Himalayan region if the temperature increases to 1.5, 2 degrees Celsius. And one of the studies shows that these are some of the issues that local people have already mentioned, like livestock disease, high temperature, erratic rainfall, flood, drought, livestock disease, and then you can see down there crop pests, and again drought. The drought is mentioned quite a significant number of times. And in this region, we can see that in this region, climate extremes. In this region, Indus River Valley Basin, it is also getting significant number of extremes, climate extremes. And in the Nepal, in the Kosi River Basin, in the Brahmaputra River basins, you can see that these are the percentage of different extremes in this region. Now, why do I talk about extremes? Because climate extremes is very much related to the crop farming, because crop has a cycle, a crop has a season, and certain crop requires certain amount of water. Certain crop is grown in some in spring, some in autumn. But if that spring, autumn, summer, winter, if that cycle is disturbed because of the climate change, then it would affect the crop productivity significantly. Now, this is the landscape of Bhutan. Here you can see the agricultural lands in the mountain slopes, and these are poor people. They can only cultivate maize. They don't have the water, enough water for irrigation. So they would only cultivate a few crops, potato and maize. But then in this region, recently what is happening is that you can see down here the flooding, and significant amount of the agricultural land is actually flooded. And let me just show you this one. This happened just in the first week of October in Bhutan. You can see that there is a cloudburst in the mountain, and that came up, and all this area is you can see a little bit of the rice fields here. And these rice fields all of these areas are actually rice fields. And these rice fields were actually completely destroyed, and there were some lives also lost, because this happened early in the morning, and people were sleeping that time. So in mountains, there is also risks not only to crops but also to human lives. And you can see that this is one of the valleys next to my college. And this region is known as the food bowl of Bhutan, because this valley produces a significant amount of rice. These are rice varieties. So, and then if the glacial lake outburst happens in the upstream areas, and this river will actually flood, or most of this actually rice fields in this region. And they have already prepared the hazard map, and then they are trying to educate people on if there is anything, how to rescue and how to get to the safe areas, etc. Just to look at this agricultural productivity in this region, country-wise, we can see that Afghanistan, that is the the trend of how the agriculture is faring. But in Bhutan, you can see that from this number 86 to 95 and 97, 102, little bit increase, but not so much increase. Of course, the agriculture is relatively doing well in Bangladesh and in China, but not in Bhutan and Afghanistan. And of course, India is also, I think, because of different policy change, they are doing a little better. Of course, India has the amount of land they have for agriculture is quite a good. But then if you just look at this trend production pattern, Bhutan and in the Himalayan region, country Nepal is relatively doing well. Of course, they have more number of populations engaged in farming. And you can see that in this water used by different sectors for Bhutan, you can see that municipal water use is relatively very less. Most of this is for agriculture. Of course, Afghanistan, very little, I think minimum is in Afghanistan for municipal use, and then Nepal second, and then of course then comes the Bhutan. Of course, I have not compared the quantities, but in case in terms of the frequency and then the general trend of use, this is the picture documented by Isimod in Kathmandu, Nepal. And here to talk about the type of agriculture in this region, 65% of this agricultural land in mountain areas is the rainfed agriculture. So only 35% is the irrigated, and in plains, of course, the 70% is the irrigated agriculture. Now, what will happen is if there is change in precipitation in the mountain areas, you can see that rain-fed agriculture would be affected. And if there is a change in water, change in the glaciers, and then discharge in the river water, what will happen is the agriculture in the plains would also be affected, because the amount of water used for agriculture is significant in this in the plain areas as well. Now, that's the national average for average statistics, and then this is about the population. You can see that the Ganges Basin, that's the population 580. I think 5,800. I don't know how to say that. Million people. This many million people. Actually, one person is 10 million. So the number of people times 10. So that's the population in this region here. So Indus Valley 268. That's the number here. So so we can get these statistics by counting this different people. And then in the Brahmaputra river basins, of course, if you just consider this part in Assam and then Arunachal Pradesh and in Bhutan, of course, relatively population is relatively less. Now here, country level total per capita water. If you just look at it, you would be surprised to see that the Bhutan has the highest per capita income in this region. I think one of the water richest countries in the world. But the interesting thing is settlements are located high up in the mountains, and this the river water is actually flowing from the narrow gorge, and then it just this river water is river water has very minimal economic use for people. So of course there's a lot of water, but most of this water cannot be used by local people. So of course in the downstream areas, country like in Assam, in West Bengal in India, these rivers are useful. But then what they say is river water sometimes it needs to be irrigated directly. It is not so much beneficial to agriculture, and um, that's why people prefer to use this groundwater. And of course, if you just look at the withdrawal of this surface water to groundwater, of course, there is, if surface water is available, people would like to use surface water, then the groundwater, because there are a lot of issues with groundwater. It brings arsenic and some other chemicals, and it is not good for human being. Now, but this is quite interesting. In Bhutan, there is no statistics. Nobody knows how much groundwater is there. Of course, there's a little bit of statistics in Bangladesh, and I think India is relatively much better in terms of mapping groundwater and use of groundwater. And groundwater extraction in Bhutan is very, very minimal. I think there are only, we can count, I think 5, 6 places that people try to dig and then find out water, but relatively it is not known yet how much groundwater is there in Bhutan. Now, in terms of the groundwater, now when you talk about water resources use, we need to also think about how much water is used for different purposes. And this dots actually, the pie chart actually shows that post feasibility to develop hydropowers in this region. For example, in Bhutan, 24,000 megawatt electricity can be produced, but so far only 70% has been developed. Similarly, in Nepal, 43,000 megawatt of electricity can be produced in this region. So only 2% is developed. And of course, there is a plan to, at least develop hydropower, more hydropower in Bhutan, increase the electricity power production at least up to 50% of what is feasible in Bhutan. But then when you talk about this climate change and then changing precipitation patterns, rainfall patterns, I think we need to also think about the alternative scenarios. What would happen if we build big hydropower dams? In terms of disasters, I think it is quite risky. But if the government goes for small hydropower like micro hydel, pico hydel, let's say micro hydel, small hydro hydels, I think that would be more feasible in the Himalayan region. And many experts are actually suggesting that Himalayan region should go for not the big ones, but small, hydels. And now that is about the big picture of water resources used for revenue generation, and this is for these water used by local people, water for sanitation, access to drinking water. If you just look at Bhutan, the rural water supply is 92%. Of course, the urban is a little bit better. In China, it is only 89% in terms of access to drinking water. Nepal access is 88%, and in India we can also see 88% of in the rural areas. In the urban areas, Myanmar is not really doing well in urban as well as in the access to drinking water. But in terms of sanitation, you can see a different picture here in the left-hand side of this one. Now, and these are different challenges, consequences. I'm not going to look at into detail, but just to show you that this study also comes from the ICIMOD publication. And what they have looked at is food utilization, food access, food availability, and then that how stable across time these different variables are. And then from this, just to show you a picture of these purple areas, you can see that these are the flooding risk zone, and then these are the Gulf risks where glaciers are. And then in terms of stability, I think these areas, there are agricultural fields in Bhutan, only river basins, and these river basins are the only areas where Bhutan can cultivate crops. So in terms of the stability, I think it's a big question that what would happen in future. We are living in an uncertain world. We don't know what will happen. So in terms of the food productivity, you can see that food productivity has really increased significantly in Bhutan, but then the area has, you can see the area is relatively decreased over time. So landslide, soil erosion, and then many people are actually moving from the rural area to urban area, and food actually comes from rural area. It doesn't come from the urban area. That's why land area is actually increasing, but in small remaining areas, whatever is left, people are actually intensifying. They started cultivating more crops in different seasons, and then they are actually they have access to better seeds now, and then because of that, the production is a little bit more. And in terms of agriculture, what the government has done is they have put in a lot of resources, promoting different rice, technologies, bringing high-yielding varieties of seeds, and also providing different agrochemicals that is, suitable for that particular soil. And of course, these are the efforts given by the government. But in terms of the revenue, we can see that the revenue has really come down in terms of the budget outlay. You can see about 16% to about 3% budget is there right now. So budget is decreasing. Then the contribution to GDP has decreased. You can see the red line. And then farming population, you can see up to 2002, it was a little bit stable. But after 2002, you can see that the population has really gone down. It is interesting. So, and then you can see that these gray areas, the gray bars, this shows that the imported rice. And then Bhutan imports rice from India, a little bit from Thailand, but so much from India. So this is quite interesting to look at. Now, in terms of the considerations of the mountain relevant hazards, you can see how these different countries are doing. If you just look at the Bhutan Ministry of Agriculture, there is a strategies to address and acknowledgement. So Bhutan has only acknowledged the floods and flash floods. It doesn't have any resources to address. And landslides, it has addressed. Government recognizes that there are landslides happening, but then it has limited resources. It hasn't been able to do anything. Rising temperature, similarly. And what Bhutan has done significantly is, of course, there is a concept of feminization of agriculture. And in that, Bhutan has recognized and actually providing more accessible tools to women to do farming. But then the other issues, Bhutan is not been able to do it right now. So in terms of the mountains, now what has happened is this plowing, preparing fields, sowing, weeding, irrigation, preparing fields. All this work is actually now shifted to women. That is why they say, because male members are migrated to urban areas, in rural areas, women are left behind, and they are engaged in doing this work. So that is why they call that agriculture is a feminine now, because women are, most of the workers are women. Now, in terms of this, the implications of climate change, food, that's why, because of this, the food security is projected at risks, because as food import has increased significantly, because of the different impact from the context of land, from the context of precipitation, rainfall, from the context of the labor force, from the context of the budget outlay. All this has actually affected the agriculture. So at least in this Himalayan region, the agricultural productivity is dwindling. So in the future, what will happen is cost of food will rise, and then the food security, nutrition would be at risk. And that is already actually projected. It is not uncertain. How much it will dwindle is not sure, of course, but the data shows that this is a significant risk in this region. Now, in this region, what we need to do, and this comes from the EC mode publication also, and in this region, what they have looked at is we need to look at different thing. We need to look at from the communities where they are living. We need to look at from the forest, how much forest is, what is the type of forest, and whether there is a whether more forest means use of more water, whether cutting down the forest will release more water, or do we need a lot of forest to actually get more water? And if there is water, we can do a little better in agriculture. So we need to look at from the water, forest in context. We need to look at from rangeland. We need to look at from livestock, different things. So using resources, what is the dynamics of the resources? We need to look at from that context, and that is the suggestion. So with that, I think that's all I need to share tonight. So if there is any questions, we can discuss. Otherwise, yeah, I would like to stop here. Thank you very much.
We're well in time. Great. Can you please stop your file, presentation file? Okay. So now we invite the audience, please. Just raise your hands or just raise your question, please. Unmute your mic and please ask the question.
I see Nusrat has a message. Can we ask a question? Will there be a question answer session? So I think
Nusrat, you please come forward.
Basically, it was a very good presentation.
No, your mic is not. Mic is having the noise and mic is not good. Yes, please raise your voice on the mic and just please stop the background noise. Some children are speaking behind.
Okay. Am I audible?
Please speak. Yes.
Nusrat, I think you can also post a question. I can read your question if you have difficulties.
Any other question? Any other person? Please write your question in the chat box, or you can speak on the mic, please. Nusrat is taking time.
Okay, then this is Nusrat, another Nusrat from Bangladesh.
Okay, please,
And,
please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Katel, for your wonderful presentation. And I'm just wondering that all we know that agriculture is important for food productivity or ensuring the food security. But is in general. I just want to know that what do you think about the relationship between agricultural land or activities and food or nutrient security? Is it the agricultural production in relation to extent or the quality?
Can you repeat the last sentence? I missed a little bit.
Actually, I just want to know that agricultural production is important. We all know, but it is the only thing to quantify the production. Do we need the no? Do we need the extent or quality to ensure the food and nutrient security in terms of security? My question is for the security purpose.
I think I don't know whether you heard about Vandana Shiva in the Vandana Shiva's book. Vandana Shiva is a advocate and an author, and she has written a number of books on different issues. And one of the book is Soil, Not Oil. That's what she mentioned. And in that, one of the arguments she posed is that, of course, if you want to just feed people and then don't care about human health, probably we can apply some chemicals, produce a lot of food, and then feed them. But at the end of the day, what matters is that are people healthy? If people are not healthy, what is the point of feeding people with a lot of food? So in that, the argument is that we need to take care of soil, because our health, our mind, our thinking actually is supported by soil. And then if soil is not healthy, we can't be anyways healthy. So nutrition, when you talk about nutrition, if soil nutrition is good, the food nutrition would be good. And then when we get a lot of nutrition from, doesn't matter, limited food, but still we can be healthy. That is the argument. So I myself had not done so much research on soil itself, but on the different texts and my field experiences, I think the quality of the soil is very important for producing quality food. That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
May I ask some questions, please, and make some comments? This is Ram from Uttarakhand.
Why not?
Yes, sir. Please.
Why not, sir?
Thank you, Dr. Katel. That was a really awesome presentation. I have a lot of takeaways and a lot of similarities to what we are experiencing over here. One query and comment I want to add or also ask was, you had mentioned population density, say in India, where the general population density is something like 344, and in the Himalaya it's about 144. I was wondering that if you have any, if you've pondered over the population density per unit area of cultivable land. Because in Uttarakhand, when we compare it to the state that we were part of, Uttar Pradesh, we have something like 22 people per square kilometer of inhabited land compared to UP, which has something like 14. So when we compare people living on cultivable land, the factor changes. Yes, we have a lot of forest and a lot of area, but a lot of that area is locked up and not accessible in the development sense. So I just want to hear your thought on that, and then later on maybe one or two more queries.
Yeah, good observation, sir, and a very good question. I think in this this study, what I have shown comes from the Ishimoto study. I thought that would be a little bit provoking and interesting. And yes, you have mentioned different statistics. I absolutely agree with your argument, because in the Ishimoto study, what is only covered is whatever the programs from Ishimoto and then regions that is covered by different activities, projects, and the programs from Ishimod. And I think they have only mapped those regions and not on the entire Himalayan region. So in this statistics, what they have based on this, it's a good basis to think about. But then it does not really cover the whole areas of the Himalayan region. Because you mentioned this in Uttaranchal itself, but then if you just go a little bit towards the Western India, the Rajasthan, I think there is a great divide. And in that great divide, if you just look at the agricultural practices, movement of people, grazing practices, traditionally that is historic. It is very interesting cases where people are moving from different regions, different seasons, using the different resources. So there is another dynamics. I don't know so much about it, but still, as few little things I know, there is a lot of dynamics beyond these statistics actually. But then when we talk about research presentations, I think the statistics matter, and this is the only they could compile it and then put it in that forum, and it is easily accessible, and that's why people take this statistics. So I just took it for this presentation, but I thought it's a provocative, and it just gives you some kind of sense, and I hope it did. And then I can sense that you are already asking a question, and I'm happy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll email you with some statistics from here for further discussion.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, I would look forward to.
Dr. Om, can you pick up the another question of Nusrat, please? She is basically asking about the groundwater.
Groundwater, right. I did not mention because I don't have any statistics of groundwater here in the Bhutan. And other Himalayan region also, I really do not know. Groundwater is very important because the surface land, and in absence of the surface water, I think groundwater is the only alternative, only option in many cases. So, but the practices that our farmers do here, they depend on agriculture, and then the way the resources there, the way they're making use of resources is only surface water, and there is almost, I think, 99%. I'm sure that there is no data. So that's why I'm also a little bit illiterate in groundwater, so I did not mention so much about groundwater. But if you just look at the complexities of groundwater, I think there is a whole lot of another universe in groundwater. So probably I should not assume at this point in time to respond to your answer, but only thing why I did not mention so much about the groundwater is that I don't have statistics.
Dr. Om Katel, thank you for this reflection, very honest one. But I think the groundwater is very, very critical in the mountain areas, particularly. It's not critical only in the plain areas or in the plateau areas. In the mountain specifically, the groundwater is the lifeline of any agriculture. I particularly disagree when you say that the mountain agriculture is dependent on the surface water. I disagree totally. If you see the rainfall does not happen all or any other kind of the precipitation. If we include the snowfall as well, so this precipitation does not happen round the year. So there are the certain times only when this rainfall or any other precipitation, this water is basically enters into this subsoil surface area and into the rocks. And this water, we all know that this percolated water goes into the plates of the different types of the rocks. And this water basically comes out in the form of the springs, and then it takes shape of the small streams. So this is the basically science of the rocks and mountains, wherein in the time when there is no rainfall, so this water is being used by all, I mean, the different farmers for the agriculture, and that becomes the basic source of the irrigation in the mountains. So we have seen this water coming from the mountain areas in the form of these springs, and then takes in the shape in the streams. It becomes the then the tributaries of the small the rivers, which the rivers mainly feed the entire different countries like India, for example, and Pakistan, for example. Although the mountainous countries like Bhutan and Nepal, and they are also benefited, their valley areas are benefited by all these rivers. So mostly, I think this groundwater data is also available. I believe that there is a lot of data on the mountain areas, on the groundwater, but it is a matter of, like you have said, that you don't have in Bhutan. I'm not sure, but in India it is available. In Pakistan it is available. I don't know about Bangladesh, but so this is the fact, like that.
Yeah. Can I just correct my sentence? At least in practice so far in Bhutan is, there is no use of groundwater. So that's what I was saying. Actually, I'm sorry. Groundwater is very important. That is, I absolutely agree with sir. But at least in terms of data, I think groundwater, Bangladesh has actually quite a lot of data in groundwater. And I think the southern India is basically better off in terms of groundwater. That's as far as I know. But other regions, I have no.
India particularly has the
Yeah.
groundwater commission already. There is Central Water Commission under which the groundwater comes. So groundwater, and they map the groundwater all across the country in all states, literally. So they have this backup already. Any other question? Please come forward. Please, you can write
Yes,
in
please.
the chat box also.
Yes, please. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, you please do.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, yes, please. Okay, thank you, Dr. Katel, and thank you, dear honorable audience. My remark is about the agriculture as a whole in mountain areas. As I have lived throughout my long life in mountains, it has been survival agriculture, depending on little water, I mean mainly surface water, and very little groundwater, rainfall as well. Now the risk in modern agriculture is that most agricultural areas are oriented towards export products. It's a mass production, and this mass production requires huge use of water and groundwater, which is getting scarce and scarce, more and more scarce. Don't you think that mountains, due to the limited area, limited ground, limited soil potential, shouldn't it be oriented towards quality rather than quantity production? So we can use 1 hectare, for example, with bioagriculture, with ecological agriculture, and with more value than 4 hectares of this fertilized, industrialized agriculture. So this is one of the risks, is that we consider soil in mountains the same way as we consider in plain areas. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you have answered in your question itself. Um, in terms of the data, if you're asking me in terms of the data, which one is better, I do not have answer. Probably Professor Sanjay might have some answer on that one. But what I can say is, in terms of agriculture in Bhutan, at least the total land for agriculture in Bhutan is 2.8%, and that too, where we can use irrigation is less than 2%. Actually, I think 1.2% is only irrigated land. Rest is just rain-fed agriculture. So, and recently, the policymakers in my parliament, they were discussing about, okay, how to diversify and how to encourage farmers to go for few crops, which is rich in nutrition, so they can actually grow few crops and then they get good nutrition. That's what they are discussing. And personally, I think that should be the way, because if we just keep on focusing, mechanizing the agriculture in mountain because of the limited land, as you mentioned, it is not possible because most of the areas are in terrain. So these machines become useless. And even if we can use machines in some way, that will actually degrade the soil rather than facilitate growing crops. So I absolutely agree with you. Growing high nutrition value crops, but then right now I can only assume, because what would happen in the future? Would there be market? Would that be sufficient for people? I can't answer that question. I think we need to experiment and look at it and then see how it can do. But theoretically, and then in the wish is that, okay, the government is also discussing, and we can go towards what you are suggesting. Yeah, thank you. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question, sorry. But this is only what I can say.
Dear Ram, you have written some comment. Can you elaborate your comment, please?
This is based on surveys and practical work in about 100 villages of, say, this one valley, and what we've seen reflected in the higher Himalaya, that while on paper there is extensive reportage of irrigation channels, or in the truth is that on ground there is no irrigation happening for most of the crops. They are all rain fed. Even local channels aren't made, and I'm talking of the greater Himalaya, not the middle or the Shivalik Himalaya or the middle Himalayas. I'm talking of the greater Himalaya, at least in Uttarakhand. While on paper there is an existence of a lot of irrigation channels, but in reality, the crops are all rain fed, whether it's potato, even rice. To some extent is dryland paddy, which grows in the higher altitudes where they don't flood irrigate fields, but they just have a different method of growing rice. Wheat, of course, also is rain fed. So I was just trying to make a distinction between what is said on paper and what is actually happening in many of the greater Himalayan villages.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you are right. Maybe it is very contextual. In fact, there are some micro irrigations in the mountains, whichever Himalaya it is, but they are even at the micro level only. In some villages, in some areas where the watershed is such that the people are receiving the upstream water into the particularly the command area. So they have made the channels. They have made like Kuhul in your, what is
Himachal.
yeah, Kuhul is in Himachal is spoken, but in Uttarakhand the name is something different for
It's
that.
it's Gul. It's
Gul.
just with
Okay.
GUL, Gul.
Yes.
Nahar.
Yes. So I have myself seen already, like I started my career in 95 in the Tehri Garhwal, interiors of Tehri Garhwal district. So where there were very good, the micro irrigation systems created by the people themselves, and they were growing the paddy, even paddy. I have seen myself. I I took part in all those activities for a long time, like half a year. So it is basically, it depends on how the topography is and how the water resource system is. So depending on the drainage system, the people have created. But if you remember this Center for Science and Environment work on the water resources when Anil Agarwal was alive, and he had wonderfully, documented this water knowledge of the different areas of India, not only India, in many other countries too. And their famous book is Dying Wisdom in English. It's a very excellent book, very thick book. They have documented from all parts of the country. So that work actually has galvanized in India the debate about the water technologies, traditional water technologies, and harvesting systems. So this micro irrigation in the mountains was very much highlighted, and I, I I remember that that organization has flagged what were the issues around the dying systems. Like you have mentioned that these channels are dying. Obviously, these technologies, traditional technologies, have died because of, there are the complex reasons for that. Policy is one of the reasons. The government policies, they have not really encouraged the people's systems. So the modern technologies are based off the irrigation have taken over, and then they have died. So anyway, but I think that there are sporadic good examples still existing in the mountains, where we see even the Gharat also very popular uh, water mills. And these surprisingly recently I was in Ukraine um, last month, and I have seen one museum where there were beautiful gharats, beautiful water mills in the museum. So these water mills were existing in many villages of the Carpathian Mountains, particularly the Zakarpattia region, and other even the Ivano-Frankivsk region too. So I was surprised to see all these technologies, and not only this one technology, but like 100 technologies I have seen in that museum in Uzhgorod, where I remember that I have seen in my childhood in the villages all these things. And not only later on in my like 25 years work in India, I have seen all those technologies existing in India also. So I was just discussing with the friends that, oh, these technologies are across the mountains. So they are existing in Indian Himalayan mountains, South Asian mountains, and also existing in the Carpathian mountains. It's very interesting. So, but point here of discussion is that these technologies are, the traditional methods of the people are just ignored and not taken into account by the modern systems. Sorry, thank you. Any other question? Otherwise, we close it because we are running out of time now.
I think there is one question from Clara. She is asking, what about rangelands, the role of livestock in local livelihoods and food security in Bhutan? That's
Is a
interesting
good,
question.
interesting. Yes, please, please.
Yeah, we have farmers who are dependent on the livestock, and we call them migratory. We call the practice as migratory herd grazing, because they move from one region to the other in different seasons, and there the livelihood, sole source of livelihood is the livestock. Mostly they rear yak in Bhutan, and then they take yak from one place to another, and year round they keep on moving from one region to the other. And yak is one of the category of livestock. Probably you know the yak. So now in terms of this, rangeland, it is quite interesting here in Bhutan. One of the not one of the, but I think 3 case studies here in Bhutan shows that rangelands are performing well because temperature is increasing, and because of it is become a little warmer, and then when it is becoming warmer, then the rangelands are actually growing more grasses, and there is more fodder for the cattle. But then the researchers have looked into whether this is good in the long run. For a long period of time, I think the yak needs to relatively move into the higher elevations. And if the higher elevations are becoming warmer and warmer, of course there would be a lot of grasses for some time of the year. But then yak cannot thrive in that area in that time. So there is a little bit difficulties. Of course, fodder would be there, but yak cannot survive. That dynamics is already there, observed in Bhutan. And this rangelands with, I think when a lot of the trend of precipitation changes. For example, if there is a lot of rain in a short period of time, and there is no rain, for some period of time, and if there is a gap, then definitely this would affect the regeneration of the grass species. Probably most of these grass species would be invaded by the invasive species, and the death risk is also there, because in Bhutan, some researchers, they have already documented that invasive species is quite rampant. It has started coming up, and they are thriving well in this abrupt change in climate. So in terms of the rangeland, with the changing temperature, changing precipitation, rangeland will change, and that will have impact on the livestock. And to those people who are dependent on the income sources from livestock, definitely will be affected. So from the highland grazing rangelands in Bhutan, I can only say this, but I think there are other dynamics of the rangelands that also we need to understand, and different kinds of rangelands. I would not be able to answer that question. So from the high altitude perspective, this is my answer.
I think, Clara, you have raised a very good question, but I think this question is needs very comprehensive expertise on the subject of rangelands and livestock interactions.
Absolutely, true.
Yeah, yes. Another thing is that if we, because our topic today is the water resources in the mountains. So if you link the water resources with the rangelands and the livestock, then it will be more appropriate. So we can discuss it in some other times, and I think this is a very different topic. Just for quick references, there are very good documented papers and resources. We have also published in I think in the month of March, we had published one very good paper from Tibet on the grazing resources and the grasses. So there's a huge material on the rangelands, grasses, livestock from different perspectives, from ecological perspective, from botanical things, from the animal husbandry things. So you can search and read about it. Particularly in India, there is a good literature available in Arunachal Pradesh. In context of the yak and the Arunachal Pradesh, you can find good literature in India, in Indian mountains, I mean. Some literature you can find in context of the Gujars who rear the buffaloes, and also the Gadis of Himachal Pradesh. So in Uttarakhand, mostly these Gujars move around with the buffaloes. So there are the different communities having different type of the livestock who really move in different parts of the mountains. So this geographically they are very different, because in the northeast India, the mountains have a different altitude. So depending on the topography and geography, the animals are different. So likewise in Central Asia, like you come from Central Asia, Kyrgyzstan, so there mostly the sheep and goats become the main livestock, and also camels, because Mongolia is having a different geography and having the camels. So we will discuss these things separately, I guess. Thank you. So let us now conclude this today's lecture. Dr. Om Katel, thank you very much for your time and for your sharing the knowledge and experiences with all the audience who really are very interested. They have been staying with us. So from the beginning, 24 people are stabilizing in the in this, and still 24 people are there, I can see. So it is a big contribution of our audience too, and they are very well, very much interested, I mean, in this subject. So thank you for you and for audience as well. So I will not take more time. And tomorrow we have a very interesting lecture, but that's very specialized. Those who are interested in the environmental pollution, water quality, fresh water quality, particularly in the rivers or in the ponds or the lakes, and those who have the interest in how the biological indicators work. So this is very quite scientific, but it's a very interesting topic. Those who have the interest can join us. So thank you very much. And after tomorrow, we will again resume from Monday onwards, 14th of November. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir, and thank you everybody for attending this lecture, and this inspires me, share others, similar kind of stories in the future. Thank you very much. I value your patience.
Okay, see you.
And bye bye. Have a nice day.
Bye bye.